Are you a singer or voice professional who wants to exercise but is concerned about its potential impact on your voice? Watch this video to find out the risks and learn how to avoid them. Hello and welcome to the Vocal Pro Health Hub, the destination for singers and other vocal professionals looking to maximize their vocal health and longevity by focusing on optimizing their health. So in this video, I want to talk about the potential detriments of exercise on the vocal mechanism. And this is the second video in a series of videos about this topic of exercise and a voice. It's a topic that I get asked every time I give a lecture or seminar or often when I give private consultations. So I thought I would use this series of videos to delve into the topic in some detail. If you didn't watch that first video on the benefits of exercise, I highly recommend you go back and watch that one first. But as I mentioned, this is the second video where we're going to talk about the potential detriments, and there are a couple. And then we're going to go in future videos to address common singer or voice professional concerns, talk about how to breathe when exercising, really important and often overlooked. And then I'm going to finally give you a useful template that you can use to guide your exercise choices. So when talking about the potential detriments of exercise on the voice, it really can be summed up under two broad categories. The first being fatigue and the second being muscular imbalances. So I'm going to use this video to dive a little bit into each of those and focus on each element separately. So firstly, fatigue. To start this conversation, I think it's really important just to highlight, it might seem obvious, but sometimes this thought gets a bit lost in the weeds, but performing or rehearsing or singing or using your vocal mechanism to a high level is neurologically demanding. And in my opinion, the level of demand is often underestimated. On top of this, I think it's really important to note that total daily effort, let's call it, the amount that you can exert yourself in a day is systemic. So by this, you have one battery for the entire system. It's not like you have, a battery for singing and rehearsing and then a different battery for working out or running or exercising, and then a different battery for going out with friends or walking around town or whatever. If you get tired systemically, regardless of what you do. So it's really important to note that if you are in a period of heavy vocal demand or rehearsal demand or whatever it is to do with your vocal capacity, you need to consider that when considering how much you can give in other potentially taxing aspects of your life, like exercise. Now, this might seem strange to some, but I do see this a lot. Some singers and vocal performers do have a tendency to overdo it with exercise for whatever reason. And I'm not going to go into sort of expectations or cultural expectations or body expectations. And, that's all really interesting stuff, but it's not what I'm talking about today. But for whatever reason, many vocal performers forget this idea of systemic fatigue, and they'll really, give their all to rehearsals and performances and singing, but then also give their all to their exercise regimen and not recognize the complex interplay between the two. And this can lead to some significant problem. So the important starting point I would offer you is that in any training program, fatigue needs to be managed and considered. And this is particularly the case if you do have a job, like being a vocal professional, where there are some sort of physical demands that may be compromised if you are generally over fatigued. So in this vein, I would offer that you consider two elements: training intensity, how hard you train or how much you train, and also training timing. How do you work your training into your daily routine? So when I'm talking about training intensity, it's really an umbrella term for how hard are you going or how much are you doing. So are you really smashing it every time you go to the gym, or the total volume of your working out? Are you running 20 miles a week or 60 miles a week? These will all have impact on your total systemic fatigue. So here we really need to consider what some people would call the benefit to fatigue balance. So how much benefit are you getting from that workout or those series of workouts that you're doing or exercises that you're doing versus how much it is taxing your body? And there are ways you can manipulate it where you're getting the most amount of benefit with the least amount of overall fatigue. And that's, of course, an ideal scenario. The opposite would be you're not getting a huge amount of benefit, but taxing yourself a whole bunch. So there are ways to manipulate your exercise to make it optimal in terms of benefit and fatigue balance. Now, obviously, this is going to vary a lot individual, depending on how fit you are, the type of exercise you like to do, how busy you are as a vocal performer, how busy you are in other elements of your life. Do you have children or not? Things like that. But a good starting point that I would offer that often surprises people is you should never be sore from your workouts. And by that, I mean, obviously, if you start a new running program or a new workout program, after the first couple of workouts, you're going to be a bit sore, and that's totally normal. But once you're in the swing of things, once you have a regular workout program that you follow, you should really only improve very gradually over time. And if you go to the gym, let's say, and you usually don't get too sore from your workouts. You go to the gym one day and you wake up the next morning and you're really sore in your legs because you did a bunch of leg exercises. You probably went a bit too hard and unnecessarily slow. And next time I'd recommend you do a little bit less. Instead of focusing on killing it each workout, really, really going for it, you should really be focusing ideally on gradual improvement over time. I realize this can be hard for some people to take on board or can even be a little bit confronting for some people because there's very much a gym culture of, give it your all, feel the burn, sweat as much as possible. And I do recognize that a lot of people gauge the effectiveness of their workout by how tired and hot and sweaty they are at the end of the workout. However, this really isn't a great gauge of how effective your training program is. The truth is, just like a single meal doesn't count for very much in terms of your overall nutritional health, and it's your eating patterns over time that determines how healthy you are, nutritionally speaking. The same applies for exercise. Each individual workout really doesn't count for that much. It's your overall workout program over time with gradual improvement seen over days, weeks, months, and years. As well as considering this general idea of you should never be sore from workouts, it can be useful to think of the rate of perceived exertion or RPE of the workouts you are doing. So I've got this scale here which gives a description of how varying levels of intensity, ranged from 1 to 10, might feel on your body so that you can have an idea of how hard it is you are working relative to your maximum level of exertion. In my experience, to get the benefit fatigue balance optimal, most of the exercise should really be in the 4 to 8 range, with more time being spent at the lower end of that range, more 4 to 6 than 4 to 8. So just to go through the descriptions listed on the chart here, exercise of an intensity 4 to 6 is considered moderate activity where you're breathing heavily but can hold a short conversation. So this is often described as the talk test. It's a way of gauging that you're at a moderate intensity of exercise. So if somebody asked you a question, if you were running alongside someone else and they asked you a question, you'd be able to answer in full sentences, but it would be a little bit uncomfortable. You wouldn't want to recite Shakespeare or sing a song or read a poem, but you could answer a question if you needed. If you then up it a little bit to more vigorous activity, 7 or 8 out of 10, to utilize that talk test again, it should feel more uncomfortable. So you might be able to speak a short sentence, but you wouldn't really want to do any more than that. If you push it higher than that to 9 or 10 out of 10, this is the point where you can only really speak 1 or 2 words at a time. So you couldn't answer a full sentence if somebody asked you a question. This indicates that you're really pushing towards the maximum intensity you could possibly manage. Now, there's nothing wrong with touching this intensity. However, it's really not that necessary to get the benefits of exercise to go at that maximum level of intensity. Of course, it's important if you're a professional athlete or a competitor, then it's a different story. But for just getting the physiological health benefits of exercise, touching that intensity is really unnecessary. And that's when you start to mess up the fatigue to benefit balance. So if you are training at 8, 9, 10 out of 10, yeah, you are training, but the fatigue is way through the roof with only just a little bit of added benefit. So that balance gets a bit mixed up. If you stay more between 4 to 6, maybe 7, maybe occasionally touching 8 out of 10, you might get slightly less benefit than if you're training at full gusto. However, your fatigue is going to go right down and be far better managed. And for vocal performers, this is really, really key because you don't want your exercise to be having a negative impact on your vocal performance. Obviously, I also mentioned the element of training timing. Unfortunately, this is where individualized advice is probably more beneficial because it's going to be entirely dependent on what your schedule and what your routine is like. However, just to offer a couple of guiding principles to make you aware of this element. I've already sort of mentioned one. You should really never let your performance suffer. You're exercising to enhance the rest of your life. So exercise should enhance your life and not detract from it. And I will admit, this is a mistake I made a few times in my performance career, where I would get up early and work out as hard as I possibly could. And then I would notice if I was rehearsing for 6 hours that day, I would always just be a little bit under my best, a bit suboptimal in terms of my vocal performance. And of course, that's really, really silly. I wasn't being paid to exercise. I was being paid to sing, in my case, sing operas. So just as a guiding principle, remember what your main purpose is. Is your main purpose exercise, or is your main purpose optimal vocal performance? The second element, muscular imbalances. And in my experience, most issues that singers either are afraid of or experience in terms of the relationship between voice and exercise tend to fall under this broad category. So it's important to note that exercise can and will change your body. And in fact, this is normally the point. We engage in exercise to elicit some sort of physical or physiological response. We want to improve our cardiovascular health. We want to increase our lung capacity. We want to increase the size and strength of our muscles, increase our bone density, whatever it is. There normally is some physiological change that is being elicited. And this, of course, is a good thing and is the point of exercise. But of course, this means that exercise is a powerful tool and it needs to be approached with some level of diligence and a systematic approach to how it may impact your body. So in my experience, vocal professionals who have had issues or experienced issues that fall under this domain of muscular imbalances tend to do so for one of three main reasons. So the first is poor programming. They're following a program that is poorly designed, that doesn't address all aspects of the body that need to be addressed. So they tend to develop one part of the body in the absence of developing another part of the body. So this can, of course, cause muscular imbalances that may cause some issues when it comes to optimal vocal performance. The second is a really obvious one, improper form. So if you are choosing to run or go to the gym or do any type of exercise, you need to learn to do so properly. Now, it doesn't mean you have to become the world expert in Olympic lifting if you want to go lift some weights, but doing a couple of sessions, if you are starting a new program, doing a few sessions with someone who knows what they're doing, a personal trainer or a friend who's really into exercise, to help guide you in using proper form when you go and lift weights, do squats, do bench presses, do pull-ups, whatever it is. This will pay dividends down the line. And it's, in my experience, when I have worked with vocal performers who have had issues when going to the gym, for example, when I've looked at their form when exercising, it becomes clear why they are having issues. It's not the exercises themselves, it's the way the person is performing those exercises. And the third element is somewhat linked with the first of poor programming, but I think worth isolating in its own, which is improper exercise selection. And what I normally see, particularly with male performers, is an imbalance of a lot of pushing exercises, but not much pulling exercises. People want to develop the beach muscles, the shoulders, the chest, the biceps, things like that. But they do so in absence of the postural muscles, the muscles of the back, the muscles of the spinal erectors, things like that. An imbalanced program, improper exercise selection can, of course, lead to muscular imbalances that may negatively impact vocal functioning. Now, of course, this isn't unique to singers or vocal professionals. Anyone engaging in a new gym routine or a new running program should learn to run properly and learn to build the program in a way that is going to be optimal for their development. But the issue for singers, as I've touched on earlier, is that we have a job that is also physically demanding in its own way and can be particularly sensitive to changes in the physiology that aren't optimal for singing. So it's not that engaging in exercise is a bad idea. As I illustrate in the first video, it's actually hugely beneficial for singers to engage in exercise. But if you do so wrongly, with poor programming, poor exercise selection, and poor exercise form, this is when you start to fall into problems. So there you have it, the potential detriments of exercise for singers and other vocal professionals and how to manage them. Just to summarize, there are two elements to consider. Overall fatigue, in which you should consider your training intensity, making sure you stay in that more moderate exercise range, 4 to 8 out of 10, and also training timing. Make sure you're not training at a time that's going to negatively impact your vocal performance. And then secondly, of course, muscular imbalances, which can largely be addressed by picking appropriate exercises and learning to do them correctly. Thank you for watching the video. As I promised, next video, I'm going to be addressing the most common singer or vocal professional concerns regarding exercises. These are going to be the concerns or myths or misconceptions that I hear singers articulate over and over again. So I'm going to be addressing them directly in the next video. I hope you found that information useful. Remember, your body is your instrument. Why not treat it like a Stradivarius? If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the Vocal Pro Health Hub for future videos and more valuable content. If you do have any questions or perhaps suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comments below. I'm here to guide you on your journey to vocal health and longevity. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.